Hello, hello, Jacksonites, and welcome to a completely spur of the moment random video that I've been thinking about doing for about the last week or so. Um, well, specifically, a few days ago, Hellhound on the Horror and Metal channel came back from a brief hiatus to do his live streaming series with two of his friends talking about their top 10 favorite horror sequels. And he had a fairly interesting list, and it also inspired me to do a list of my very own. So, of course, me being me, I decided to not like steal or rip off the idea, but oh, Cinematic Trash is here. Hello. Not like steal or rip off the idea, but I was definitely inspired to make my own list of my own and add to it. So instead of a top 10, I have a top 15. So today I will be listing off my top 15 favorite horror movie sequels. I like franchises, and I'm the type of person that tends to like sequels more than their originals. Um, there are a lot of cases of that on this list. Um, this list is also in no real strong particular order. It's kind of loose. The bottom of the list is like my least favorite of my favorite, but I do still consider it to be my favorite. And there's a couple really unconventional installments on here. And there's one that has a lot of controversy attached to it. But I will explain why these films are on this list as I go along, of course, as I usually do. I don't really have any honorable mentions, really. This is just my 15 favorites. Again, not in any strong particular order. This is just the collection of, when it comes to horror movie sequels, these are the ones that instantly come to mind whenever I think of favorites. And there's a few on here that are multiple installments of the same franchise, but I did try to limit it to me to be no more than just two, thankfully. But um like spoilers, there's a couple Friday the 13th movies on here, and there's a couple Evil Dead installments on here. And there's a couple Halloween movies on here, so brief spoiler there, but I really just couldn't stick to just one movie per franchise. Otherwise, I'd have just made it a top 10. But I don't like top 10s, those are boring. So, with all that being said, before we begin, a word from our sponsor. And let us begin. My number 15 is Evil Dead 2. I don't have much to say about this, considering I already talked about it in my ranking the Evil Dead franchise, but Evil Dead 2 is a very damn solid sequel. Lord Hellhound, if he's watching this is his number one. I don't like it nearly that much, especially on a recent rewatch. I do realize that I do like it, but I do even more so firmly state that I do think Evil Dead 2 is just a little bit on the overrated side. I like a lot of things about it. It's got amazing special effects, whack ass over the top gore. It's a very original film. And like a lot of sequels on this list, it feels like a natural continuation of its predecessor. And it also takes advantage of a much larger budget compared to its predecessor. It's one of those, not quite as much, but it's one of those examples where the sequel takes the best aspects of its predecessor and bumps it up to 99. This is one of those examples. Not the strongest, in my opinion, but still, Evil Dead 2 is a lot of fun and a very damn solid sequel. Coming in at number 14 is Friday the 13th, Part 6. Jason Lives. This movie's not scary, and that's probably the biggest reason why this is so low on my list. And its kills are also as typically censored all the shit. But even despite all of those, Friday the 13th Part 6 is still one of the best installments of the Friday the 13th franchise. It just ups the fun factor to 99. Whenever I think of a Friday the 13th movie that is just a fun film, something that you can just sit back and enjoy and just have a great time watching, either by yourself or especially with friends, Friday Part 6 instantly comes to mind. This and Part 3. Um, CJ Graham does a great job as Jason Voorhees. This was the debut of Zombie Jason, whom is the incarnation of Jason that I prefer. I like the look of Jason in Part 6 a lot more as Zombie Jason, but still, this movie was a very good start to Zombie Jason. Even though the kills are butchered to shit, they are still fun, creative, and entertaining. And of course, the character of Tommy, in my opinion, reaches his peak in this film. It's just kind of a shame that the franchise never brought Tommy back. But at least the final outing of Tommy is a good one to go out on. So, yeah, Friday Part 6, it's a very fun flick. Not scary at all, but it's a lot of fun. Coming in at number 13 is Nightmare on Elm Street 3. Now, the reason why this list is not like in a strong order is just because these are just 15 of my favorite horror sequels. There's not really a super strong ranking that I give them from least favorite to absolute favorite. So Nightmare on Elm Street 3 being at number 13 isn't that much of a sin. I don't really have anything wrong with Nightmare on Elm Street 3. There's just 12 movies past this that I like more. But Nightmare on Elm Street 3, and there's a reason why it's such a big fan favorite movie, especially amongst Nightmare on Elm Street fans. Um, it's got one of the best portrayals of Freddy Krueger by Robert Englund. It feels like it has the best balance of being scary but also funny. It's also a very creative film. Gone is the restrictive haunted house elements of Nightmare on Elm Street 2. This movie is just diving full bore back into the dream world concept, and of the entire Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, except for maybe Freddy versus Jason, this is the installment where the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise reached its like peak of potential in exploiting the dream world concept. And this also introduced the concept of, well, the Dream Warriors sounds just a bit cheesy, but still, it's cool. But people fighting back in their dreams against Freddy. It gave the audience a much more empowering feel, while also still bumping up the threat level for Freddy Krueger. So even though the characters feel like they have the ability to fight back, Freddy Krueger is still threatening and intimidating. So it's a good balance. But like with also with Friday the 13th Part 6, this is just such a fun flick. It's very creative, very inventive, highly entertaining, very ambitious. It's just a kick-ass sequel. And I've talked about this movie so many times it's not even funny, but it truly is the best of the Nightmare on Elm Street, the solo Nightmare on Elm Street films specifically. This is the one that has controversy attached to it. Coming in at number 12 is Jeepers Creepers 2. Okay, so oh crap, what the hell is his name? what the fuck is his name? Victor Salva. Okay, so I am fully aware of Victor Salva's past crimes. I am aware of what Victor Salva has done in the past. And it's not to be commended, not to be supported, and not to be ignored or forgotten. What Victor Salva did in the past was very wrong, and I don't think he was punished enough for it. Pushing all of that controversy aside, okay, I do like the first Jeepers Creepers film, but in my opinion, it's 2001 as all living fuck. And I think the film's strongest moment is the first 20 minutes. After that, the movie just kind of coasts on being just standard, like, okay. It's a fun monster movie and a fun road horror movie. But the last 20 minutes or so, the movie just takes a sharp nosedive downhill for me. So it's an enjoyable film, but I think it's very prototypey. Jeepers Creepers 2 is one of those cases where the director took the best aspects of the first movie and just bumped it up to 99. And in my opinion, the best aspect of the first Jeepers Creepers film was the creeper himself, played by Jonathan Breck. Hands down, Jeepers Creepers 2 is Jonathan Breck's best performance as the creeper. He's a lot more personable. He's a lot scarier. He may not be quite as intimidating, but he kind of has this sinister, like freaky, psychotic glee to all of his killings. He has a lot more facial expressions, and the makeup and special effects on him are definitely a big improvement. Um, Even though he doesn't speak, he says a lot more with his facial expressions and his body language. He's also a little funnier. Overall, if you want to watch a Jeepers Creepers movie for the creeper, I think Jeepers Creepers 2 is at its best. It also has a cast of, in my opinion at least, um, much more likable characters, even though there's a lot of homoerotic subtext all throughout this film, which a la, speaking of which, Nightmare on Elm Street 2 does kind of stick out like a sore thumb. But the addition of Ray Wise to the cast is very, very appreciated. Overall, Jeepers Creepers 2, I dig the shit out of this movie. I think Jeepers Creepers 2 is one of the most underrated horror sequels of all time. And while it is a shame that for 14 years this was a very like this was all that we had in the Jeepers Creepers franchise, looking back, it was a nice second film to go out on. Like there's the possibility of a sequel with this movie's ending, but it does function very well just as a duology, a good two-parter. And the second part is the one I prefer. Coming in at number 11 is Child's Play 2. Again, like with previous ones, this takes everything that was great about the first movie and bumps it up to 99. And it even makes some very appreciated improvements over its predecessor, namely in Andy's acting. What the hell is his name? Crap. Alex Vincent. Okay, yeah. Alex Vincent's acting in Child's Play 2 is a vast improvement over what it was in the first movie. It's a somewhat passable considering Alex Vincent was, I believe, 5 or 6 years old when he did the first Child's Play film. But even in just 2 years, you can tell that his acting drastically, significantly improved between the two films. There's no cringy ass child dialogue. There's no cringy ass child acting. There's no wooden performances or wooden deliveries. Uh, Alex's acting is like pitch perfect on point in this movie. Um, Also, Alex's relationship with Kyle is very adorable and very believable. Um, she fills in her role as an older sister figure to Andy very well, in my opinion. Their chemistry is great, and their bonding and relationship is very sweet and believable. But the biggest thing that this movie improves on is the design of Chucky and just Chucky as a character overall. Brad Dourif's performance is way better than it was in the first movie. He's a lot funnier. He's still a lot scarier. He's a lot more threatening. And the stakes feel a bit higher and a bit more sinister in this movie, which is really, really great. It feels like a perfect companion piece to the first movie, and also feels like a natural continuation to the first movie. Um, and like Nightmare on Elm Street 3, there's a reason why Child's Play 2 is such a big fan favorite amongst Child's Play fans, because it's just such a damn solid movie. And it gives Chucky, in my opinion, one of his most definitive deaths of the entire franchise, being covered in melted plastic and then filled up with oxygen and blown the fuck up. It's great. Coming in at number 10 is Ash versus Evil Dead Season 1 specifically. Once again, not going to talk about this very much, considering we just did an Evil Dead video, but Ash versus Evil Dead Season 1 is just awesome. Looking past my major nostalgia for the original Evil Dead, this to me is Evil Dead at its very best. It's the best hybridization of, okay, yeah, sure, the fully 3D fleshed out version of Ash from Army of Darkness, and the over the top splattery gore of Evil Dead 2. It's a perfect harmonious mix, and it feels right at home. It's such a great continuation of the Evil Dead series, such a long, much appreciated, overdue, um, like great return to form for the Evil Dead franchise after 25 years of nothing. Um, it feels like a big, giant, triumphant return. Like, oh shit, my gun's over there. Like, Ashy Slashy, the Demon Slayer, is back, bitches, and he is back for motherfucking good. Um, Not much to say about Ash versus Evil Dead season 1. Yeah, the final episode is kind of a shitty one, but outside of that, this is such a damn awesome season of television and is a great return to form and a great continuation of the series. Coming in at number 9 is Friday the 13th Part 3. This is my favorite of the OG Friday the 13th movies. Um, Part 3 kicks all sorts of ass. At least for me. I know that this is not a like super big fan favorite amongst Friday the 13th fans. But just for me, this is where they have the best balance. And this is also, in my opinion, the best portrayal of human pre-zombie Jason of the whole series. Everybody else says Friday the 13th Part 4. See, that movie to me is just a carbon copy of this movie, just lesser. I strongly prefer Part 3 over Part 4. That nobody ever says that except for me. But yeah, Part 3 works for me. I like the characters actually for once. The kills, well censored, sure, are still entertaining and fun. I like the suspense. I like the atmosphere. This is also the introduction of Hockey Mask Jason, which is much appreciated. It's a very good debut of Hockey Mask Jason. Um, and just overall, it's a fun, entertaining, well-made flick. Um, Kicks all sorts of ass. I think I've realized that this video might not be as long as I thought it would be. Coming in at number 8 is Freddy versus Jason. Now, I do realize that it is very odd having this movie at number 8 because every other slasher movie list that I've made that involves Freddy versus Jason tends to be at the number 1 spot. Well, I'm looking at this list purely in the sense of them being sequels. Now, I do agree with what a lot of people say in that Freddy versus Jason feels more like a Nightmare on Elm Street movie as opposed to a Friday the 13th film. Considering Freddy himself is the main antagonist, a lot of the movie takes place on Elm Street and deals with a lot of Nightmare on Elm Street mythos. Jason is just here kind of as a plot device, like the xenomorphs in Alien versus Predator. Um, but as a sequel, though, it's kind of ambiguous well, I mean, not whether or not this takes place in the Nightmare on Elm Street continuity, but it's kind of debatable on when it takes place in the continuity. And it's also debatable on like how this is a continuation for Jason. Is this in the Jason Voorhees continuity? Like, is this a sequel to Jason Goes to Hell? I mean, I guess it could be, but they never state it. There's no returning characters from previous Nightmare or Friday films. Um, so its placement in both Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th timeline is a bit dubious and vague, but still, as a sequel, it's fucking awesome. Freddy versus Jay. I mean, I've talked about this movie many, many, many times. Freddy versus Jason is one of the very best crossover movies of all time. Matter of fact, it just might be my favorite. It's balls out crazy. There's tons of kills, tons of gore. Robert Englund's best performance as Freddy Krueger of the entire Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Two big badass fight scenes between Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees. A kick-ass soundtrack. I mean, I could just go on forever. Freddy versus Jason is such an awesome movie. I don't give a shit what any of the haters say. Freddy versus Jason is a masterpiece. Coming in at number 7 is Aliens. Oh, that's cool. Anthony Sarkis is here saying, I actually met Ken Kersinger, who's the guy who played Jason Voorhees in Freddy vs. Jason back in June. And that's right, this year is Freddy vs. Jason's 20th anniversary. Okay. Yeah, number 7 is Aliens. With how much I love this movie and like how much of a masterpiece I think it is, some people will probably ask, why is this at number 7? Simply just because I don't find it scary anymore. That's not a flaw or a complaint by any means, but that is why I don't have this any higher. Um, I consider it to be it's definitely an action horror film, but I think it kind of leans more towards action rather than scares, even though it does have great suspense and some decent jump scares. But Alien still overall is a fucking masterpiece of a movie. Um, Watch me and Trevor Boy's 2.5 hour long review of this film to get more insight on that. But Aliens is a true masterpiece of both action and horror and sci-fi cinema. It is just such a kick-ass movie. Coming in at number 6 is Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. I just got done rewatching this movie for the first time in 2 years, like 2 hours ago. This movie is okay. It's flawed, but it's incredibly overrated or overhated and underrated at the same time. again, yes, this movie has flaws. Its characters are quite unlikable, or some of its characters are quite unlikable. The whole Ghost Mom Sherry Moon zombie inclusion is very forced and stupid and confusing. Both endings suck, honestly, in my opinion. Um, and the psychic link between Laurie and Michael Myers is dumb, forced, and not very well explained. But how well this movie resonates with me, it resonates with me incredibly strongly. And this does a lot of good things that good sequels should do. And in this case, I love that this movie is a character study. It um, expands on the aftermath of what happened in Rob Zombie's remake, and it showcases, in my opinion, a very realistic depiction of what would happen to the victims of Michael Myers after a Michael Myers attack. Sure, it's exaggerated quite a lot in both Laurie Strode and Dr. Loomis's case, but still, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 so very strongly resonates with me. Outside of that, too, it gives us a brutal, savage Michael Myers and some of the most gnarly, violent, and fucked up kills of the entire Halloween franchise, rivaled only by Halloween Kills, in my opinion. Um, this movie is incredibly overhated, in my opinion. People just need to get off their fucking high horse and give Halloween 2 a much better chance than what they give it. Fuck all you haters. Coming in at number 5 is Doctor Sleep. I absolutely adored this movie. Go watch me and Shawnee Boy's review of Doctor Sleep to get more thoughts on this. But Doctor Sleep is just such an incredible movie. It's an incredible sequel to The Shining. It's also a rare case where it's a sequel to The Shining, a movie that I do not like hardly at all. But it's a sequel to a movie that I really dislike, and it's a film that is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's such a weird, unique film in that aspect to me. It's a miracle that I ended up liking this movie as much as I do. Doctor Sleep is just so fucking great. It's a strange continuation of The Shining, but at the same time, it does feel like a natural continuation of The Shining. Even though, looking back, The Shining elements in this film aren't as prevalent as you might think. It has the feel and atmosphere, and of course, one of the main characters from The Shining, but it explores this kind of almost completely unrelated aspect of the world of Stephen King, but at the end, kind of geniusly interweaves it into the lore of The Shining in a better way in the book, in my opinion, as the only issue that I have with Doctor Sleep is the ending. It's a hybridization of the ending to the book of Doctor of no of the original ending in The Shining with the original ending of the book. And I just feel like they should have just followed the book. Fuck making peace with Stephen King and Stanley Kubrick. Fuck making peace with all that shit. Just adapt the ending to the book. That's the ending I would have much strongly preferred. But no, we just have the movie in its current state. But whatever. Doctor Sleep is still a masterpiece. One of my favorite films, one of my favorite horror movies, and one of my favorite horror sequels. I absolutely love it. Coming in at number 4 is Predator 2. This is the stronger, scary sequel of the Alien and Predator franchise, in my opinion. But it does a lot of the same things that Aliens does. It feels like a natural continuation of its predecessor. It brings back all of the best things about the first movie, and it bumps the best aspects of the first movie up to 99. It adds some few twists and turns that feel natural, and they expand on the previous film's mythology. And also, this is one of the most violent installments of the Alien and Predator franchise. And Hell, it's the only one on this list that was almost NC-17. Um, yeah, I don't think any other movie here was anywhere close to being that violent. And thankfully, unlike a lot of the 80s Friday the 13th films, it doesn't show that it was edited down. But Predator 2 is such a goddamn underrated movie. And it improves on its predecessor in one major area, in the fact that it is a lot scarier. Not overly, mind you, but it does have some decent suspense, and it has some freak out moments and good jump scares. Predator 2 is very much strong. I said this in our review with Trevor Boy. It is a much stronger horror movie than its predecessor, and I much greatly appreciate that. That is why I definitively do now say Predator 2 is my favorite Predator film. But now that Prey is getting a DVD release this October, maybe that'll change. Who knows? Have to wait and see. Wink, wink. Coming in at number 3 is It Chapter 2. I seriously don't understand the hate for this movie. Is it just the arbitrary horror movie sequel hate that so many fucking horror fans just throw at this movie? You get a great first movie and then they just arbitrarily feel the need to just shit all over it and just say it's not as good as the first movie. Fuck all of you. Okay, maybe sure there's a couple scenes that don't quite fit, and there's a couple decisions made with the characters that, at least in my opinion, don't quite fit. But still, It Chapter 2 is such a fucking great movie. It's a great. I don't even really see it as a sequel. It's just the second part of the 6-hour long movie that is It, directed by Andy Muschietti. But as a sequel, it's a great, great, great fucking sequel. It feels perfectly in tune with the first movie. Um, the characters are all flawlessly done in adult times. Um, what's his name? Bill Skarsgård is perfect as Pennywise. It doesn't even feel like there is 2 year difference. It just feels like more of Pennywise that we saw back in 2017. The characters are great. The gore is great. The kills are great. And the destruction of Pennywise is fabulous. I just seriously cannot say enough good things about It Chapter 2. It's such an underrated movie and such an underappreciated sequel. It Chapter 2 is fucking awesome. Coming in at number 2 is the original Day of the Dead. Aside from Predator 2, and maybe Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, this is probably the goriest movie in this entire list. But fucking A, is it awesome. Of Tom Savini's entire career as a special effects artist, Day of the Dead is his best work. Um, had this movie actually been submitted to the MPAA, it probably would have gotten an X rating. But I fucking love it for that. Insane gore, amazing special effects, great characters, great action scenes, great music. Overall, Day of the Dead 1985 is just such a masterpiece of both zombie movies, horror sequels, and just films overall. I absolutely fucking love Day of the Dead. And also, aside from Predator 2, this is the one of this entire list that I've seen the most. And I almost did have this at number 1. Because you'd think, with me being such a big zombie movie fan, you'd think I would have had this at number 1. But there's one movie that I like more than this. So, my number 1 favorite horror sequel of all time is Halloween 2018. I 2018 was a great year in the Hollywood Renaissance era as well. And well, no, probably Aquaman is my favorite movie of 2018. But fucking A, Halloween 2018 is a very, very, very close contender. I love every aspect of this movie. It brought back the Halloween franchise after nearly a decade of stagnation. After lots of talk, we finally were delivered our favorite horror franchise back on the big screen. And it's the beginning of my favorite trilogy in the Halloween franchise, 2018 Kills and Ends. Sure, its third installment is definitely the weakest of the three, but I still think it's a good movie. But I can't say enough good things about Halloween 2018. I absolutely love it. It's a great legacy sequel, great return to form, just great slasher movie. It's got really good kills, a great portrayal of Michael Myers. It does the Halloween franchise damn good justice. And I'm happy to see that this is one of the more positively received films in the Halloween franchise. That's fucking great to me. But yes, Halloween 2018 is my favorite horror sequel of all time. And I'm not just saying that because it's a new movie. I don't want to sound like a millennial who just likes only new stuff. But as a horror sequel, this movie just did it right for me. It saw the flaws of its franchise's past and just said, nah, we're just going to give it a clean sweep and just start over fresh and new. And it does that in the absolute best of ways. Any future requel films should take note from this movie. Like with It 2017, both being a new measuring stick for readaptations of books, but also readaptations of Stephen King books. Any movie that wants to be a legacy sequel or a requel, quote unquote, should look at this movie and be like, okay, that's how you do it. Maybe not quite so much like Leather or Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022, which clearly is ripping off a lot of aspects of Halloween 2018. Maybe not quite like that, but if you want to do a legacy sequel, Halloween 2018 is how you do it. And I fucking love this movie. Post your comments down below and let me know what you think. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and share this video with your friends. My apologies for not having this be a super long video, but, well, admittedly, a lot of these movies I have talked about in great length before, but still, sometimes short and sweet's just what you need. Um, Classic Universal Monsters. Nah, there's really none of the classic Universal Monster sequels that I would say are some of my favorites. Same for Hammer sequels, even more so with Hammer. Now that I've actually seen a fair few Hammer films. Yeah, post down below what are your favorite horror sequels. And as always, go out and if you have a horror movie and it gets sequels, don't be one of those assholes that just arbitrarily shits on the franchise, just says it's not as good as the first one. Makes you look kind of gatekeepy and lame and stupid. And I will see you guys in the next video.